I am pleased to introduce a discussion on how modern literature interprets the classic Indian epic. Today's focus is on the most controversial and profound book about the Mahabharata, a novel that presents familiar heroes from a completely different perspective. Here, the usual division between light and darkness loses its meaning. The story explores how divine will transforms into political intrigue. What is it like to be a pawn in a chess game played by immortal beings? Prepare for an immersion into an alternative view of the great conflict on the Kurukshetra battlefield, where maintaining the world order sometimes demands harsh decisions, and the highest design reshapes the destinies of warriors and sages. In the traditional Mahabharata, the conflict between the sons of Pandu and Dhritarashtra is portrayed as a direct clash between righteousness and vice. The Pandavas are seen as bearers of Dharma, the universal law and order, while the Kauravas are viewed as its disruptors. This feud, born within the walls of Hastinapura's palace, gradually engulfed the ancient world. However, this novel invites us to shift our perspective. It presents events through the lens of human tragedy, where the usual categories of good and evil blur. In this interpretation, divine beings intervene not for abstract ideals, but for their own pragmatic goals. Drawing from the original verses of the ancient epic, the authors reveal the hidden underside of the divine plan. My name is Michael Reynolds. You're watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching my content. I'd appreciate your subscription and like. Enjoy the video. Turning to the texts of the Puranas and Upanishads, we see that higher powers often act with calculated intent. This trait is taken to the extreme in the novel. As the plot unfolds, readers feel the weight of foreknowledge. The characters live, love, build families, and make plans, unaware that their fates are already written in celestial offices. Every step they take, every decision they make, only brings them closer to the inevitable catastrophe on Kurukshetra. This deconstruction of the myth helps modern readers grasp ancient Indian philosophy more deeply. By stripping away epic grandeur, the authors expose the complex, contradictory nature of the characters. There is a shift from viewing heroes as flat archetypes to understanding their vivid psychology. Behind every great deed lie very human motives, fears, and doubts. For example, righteous anger often stems from wounded pride, and the pursuit of duty can mask a simple fear of social judgment. This makes the ancient text strikingly relevant, bridging the millennia between the characters and the audience. Understanding these earthly motives naturally leads to the question of who created the conditions for their expression. If people are subject to passions, then someone must have skillfully guided these passions in the desired direction. In the original Mahabharata, divine intervention often appears as aid to the righteous. In this alternative reading, the intervention takes the form of intricate manipulation. This raises the question: what purpose was served by initiating this brutal game in which generations of warriors were raised for mutual destruction? Reflecting on this, it becomes clear that such a massive conflict could not have arisen from a simple family quarrel. It required deliberate stoking of hatred, supported by the authority of higher powers. In this context, the palace intrigues of Hastinapura gain a new dimension. Advisors whisper in corridors, kings receive envoys, priests perform complex rituals trying to appease invisible patrons. Yet all these actions are only the visible parts of a vast mechanism. The real decisions are made beyond human comprehension. Mortal rulers believe they govern states, pass laws, and judge. They deliver long speeches about honor and the need to defend their lands. But in truth, they merely follow a path laid out long before their birth. Every participant in the coming battle carries within themselves the seed of their own destruction. The novel's authors explore in detail how divine beings find the weak points in each ruler's soul. Some are offered power, others promised glory, and some bound by peace oaths. Gradually, these simple actions take on the shape of a carefully orchestrated global conspiracy. None of the mortals can see the entire picture. They see only their immediate enemies, brothers, uncles, teachers, standing on the opposite side of the barricades. This limited human vision becomes the main weapon in the hands of those who watch from an unreachable height. According to traditional Puranic stories, the earth, burdened and weary, took the form of a cow and went to the creator Brahma, complaining of the unbearable weight created by demons known as asuras. These beings did not merely roam forests. They were born into royal families, occupied thrones, and built powerful states. They constructed impregnable fortresses, gathered vast armies, and imposed their laws, disrupting the natural order. Hearing Earth's plea, the divine beings decide to cleanse the planet of this burden. Folklore scholars interpret this image as a metaphor for overpopulation and resource depletion, calling for radical renewal. However, the novel's authors shift the focus and pose a different question. They follow the mechanics of how higher powers manipulate history to carry out a large-scale purge through others' hands. In their interpretation, the problem lies not in mythical creatures, but in a very real caste of rulers. Historically, the Kshatriyas formed the foundation of ancient Indian statehood. From childhood, their lives were governed by strict rules. Boys were trained in archery, chariot driving, sword and spear mastery. They studied strategy, politics, and economics. Over time, these rulers gained powers beyond human limits. Kings mastered divine weapons, learned secret mantras capable of summoning fire from the heavens or drying rivers, and ceased to fear their invisible patrons. They conducted elaborate sacrificial rituals, gave Brahmins vast herds of cattle and gold bars, accumulating spiritual merit. This merit made them nearly invulnerable. To maintain their own power and preserve the established hierarchy, the divine beings require the global elimination of these superhumans. The highest pantheon understands that direct confrontation could destroy the heavens themselves, as many earthly warriors surpass the deities in strength. This creates a complex logistical challenge: how to compel millions of trained soldiers worldwide to turn against each other. A direct order would not work. Kings are too proud to obey blindly. A world war is needed, and to unleash it requires a conflict that touches upon honor, duty, and the right to land. The birth of the cousins, the Pandavas and Kauravas, within the same ruling dynasty of Kuru, is an example of such a deliberate step. This is the creation of a slow-burning detonator. The higher powers artificially raise two irreconcilable enemies under one palace roof in Hastinapura. The boys play together, learn from the same teachers, eat at the same table. Yet with each passing year, the gulf between them widens. The gods know that at the appointed time, these brothers will drag all the armies of the ancient world into oblivion, summoning allies from across the continent. In the heavenly realms, long calculations continue. The deities assign roles, deciding who among them will incarnate on earth as heroes and who will become their adversaries. One of the celestial beings reflects on how mortals are deeply attached to their families, traditions, and patches of land. If given a reason to feel wounded pride, they will forge swords and sharpen arrows themselves. All that remains is to divide their inheritance so that no side feels secure. Legitimate authority will clash with the power of the strong, and then blood will flow like a river, cleansing the land. Other divine figures agree with this plan, knowing its implementation will take many decades. They begin placing their emissaries within the ruling families, ensuring the birth of children with predetermined character traits. This interpretation shifts the focus from religious reverence to political pragmatism. The authors explore the mechanics of a controlled crisis in detail. Entire generations of people are raised solely as tools for an impending conflict. Earthly rulers arrange dynastic marriages, send caravans laden with spices and silk to neighboring lands, build new cities with wide streets, and strengthen fortress walls. They sincerely believe in the importance of their ambitions, plan the future of their dynasties, and care for the welfare of their subjects, completely unaware of their roles as pawns on a grand chessboard. The problem of free will becomes sharply defined here. A person makes decisions based on their desires and sense of duty, but these very desires are subtly implanted in their minds from outside. Every action that seems independent only brings the inevitable conclusion closer. A provocation on such a scale cannot develop on its own. An unattended conflict risks dying out, turning to peaceful negotiations, or ending in a local skirmish between two squads. For the flame to engulf the entire continent, from the snowy peaks of the Himalayas to the southern oceans, constant control is required. The celestial administration needs an executor capable of bringing the divine plan into reality, operating directly among humans amid palace intrigues. This agent must possess authority, a calculating mind, and the willingness to sacrifice millions of lives to preserve universal balance. There arises a need for a figure who can channel the ruler's anger in the right direction, speak the necessary words at the right time, and forge alliances while remaining beyond suspicion. The world holds its breath, awaiting the one who will make the first move in this game. On the political stage appears Krishna, a prince from a pastoral tribe. Scholars believe the image of this hero was formed gradually, absorbing traits of various tribal deities over many centuries. The original epic and subsequent religious texts praise him as a full incarnation of a supreme protector, the all-good savior and absolute guardian of the cosmos. According to traditional interpretations, his actions are always guided by the highest good, mercy, and care for humanity. However, the narrative here calls him differently, the Black Instigator. The authors deliberately shift the focus, highlighting episodes where Krishna acts with cunning, deception, and subtle political calculation. He begins weaving a complex web of alliances and intrigues, systematically steering rulers toward a path inevitably leading to a global armed conflict. Krishna moves between ancient capitals, visits palaces adorned with intricate stone carvings and precious metals, participates in secret councils and long feasts. Outwardly, he remains a courteous guest, wise mentor, and devoted ally whose advice is highly valued. Behind this mask of benevolence hides a calculating strategist who evaluates every monarch he meets solely as a potential figure on a vast game board. The authors vividly depict scenes where the deity gently but firmly pushes mortals toward fateful decisions, skillfully exploiting their fears, unfulfilled ambitions, and distorted notions of warrior duty. In one such conversation, set in the dim half-light of palace chambers, where oil lamps burn faintly and the air is heavy with sandalwood scent, a local ruler weary of constant tension, mutual claims, and territorial disputes with restless neighbours, expresses serious doubts about further escalating relations. He speaks at length about the prosperity of his lands, proud of full granaries, established trade routes, and the peaceful lives of his subjects, sincerely hoping to preserve this fragile peace for future generations. "Your task, O king, is not to keep peace within your palace," Krishna says, looking intently at his interlocutor. "Your duty to the realm demands action. If blood must be shed to maintain world order, you will do so, for that is dharma. All else is weakness of mind." The ruler, overwhelmed by this flawless logic and the invisible pressure of divine authority, sighs deeply and agrees with his guest's arguments. At that moment, he does not realize he has just signed the sentence for thousands who will soon leave their homes, abandon families, and march to military camps from which they will never return to their former lives. This phenomenon of divine manipulation raises a complex ethical question. Does a higher goal justify the use of outright cunning and calculated betrayal? Such methods of governance provide a clear example of how, in this story, Krishna is not a loving father of the universe, ready to forgive his unwise children's mistakes, but rather its strict crisis manager. For him, people remain expendable material in the process of repairing the broken mechanism of the cosmos. When the balance of power is disturbed, when the number of mighty warriors exceeds acceptable limits and threatens the very existence of the world, the mechanism demands radical cleansing. The divine plan admits no sentimentality or human pity. Krishna methodically creates conditions under which a large-scale conflict becomes inevitable. He knows each ruler's weaknesses perfectly. Some pride can be wounded by a careless word at a public gathering. Some greed can be ignited with promises of new fertile lands, and blind loyalty to the law can be used as a reliable weapon against its bearer. The text shows how skillfully the Black Instigator plays on the ruler's internal contradictions. He does not force people to commit harsh acts directly or issue explicit orders. Instead, he creates political and social circumstances in which monarchs themselves choose to escalate the conflict. They sincerely believe they are defending historical justice or restoring the trampled honor of their ancient lineage. This hidden manipulation works flawlessly because it relies on basic human passions and weaknesses. Krishna acts as a catalyst for processes that have been maturing in society for decades. He only slightly accelerates events, carefully removing diplomatic obstacles on the path to a general clash between two great armies. However, even the most skilled puppeteer needs suitable pieces on the board. To realize such a grand plan, it is not enough to pit a few neighboring states against each other. Heroes of exceptional stature are required, individuals whose deep personal traumas and undeniable martial virtues can be used to ignite irreconcilable enmity. These people must command unquestioned respect among warriors, possess knowledge of wielding devastating divine weapons, and lead vast armies of devoted followers. Their personal conflict must become the axis around which the whirlpool of world war will spin. The divine manager must identify those whose impeccable reputation and high status can draw all other continental rulers into a bloody conflict. Such figures already exist, waiting in the dense shadows of palace intrigues and prolonged dynastic disputes. Tradition dictates that the sons of the Pandu be regarded as flawless knights. For centuries, ancient interpreters shaped the image of rulers whose actions were guided by supreme duty and adherence to religious commandments. However, a fresh perspective on the original source reveals more complex character traits of these brothers. Take, for example, the eldest, Yudhishthira. The epic names him the son of the god of justice, Dharma, portraying him as the living embodiment of honesty on earth. Yet behind this righteous facade lies a destructive passion for gambling. This addiction occasionally overwhelms his judgment. In the heat of dice games held in a specially constructed hall, he loses control repeatedly. The ruler wagers not only the state treasury, war elephants and chariots, but also the freedom of his brothers and the honour of his wife, Draupadi. Such behaviour sharply contrasts with the image of a wise monarch. Arjuna, renowned as the finest archer of his time, displays arrogance toward warriors of humble origins. He revels in the power granted by divine intervention and possession of celestial weapons capable of decimating entire armies. In his pursuit of martial glory, he forgets human compassion, striking down opponents who have already laid down their arms or lost their chariots. Bhima, endowed with immense physical strength, frequently exhibits uncontrolled brutality in battle. His methods of combat with clubs sometimes flagrantly violate the warrior codes that forbid strikes below the waist. These flaws are not inventions of later storytellers, but are drawn from the depths of the ancient epic, revealing layers concealed by subsequent editors. In contrast, the Kauravas gain human qualities in the narrative, traditionally branded as embodiments of evil. A shift in perspective uncovers the motives behind their actions. The eldest brother, Duryodhana, is portrayed not merely as an envious relative thirsting for blood, but as an administrator devoted daily to the kingdom's prosperity. He orders the construction of new wells along trade routes, dispatches troops to protect merchant caravans from bandits, and personally oversees tax collection. Moreover, he proves to be a loyal friend. This loyalty is vividly demonstrated during a martial tournament in Hastinapura. When Arjuna publicly mocks Karna's low birth and refuses to face him in the arena, it is Duryodhana who intervenes. He crowns Karna king of the Anga kingdom right there in the stadium, maintaining this alliance until the very end. Duryodhana sincerely wonders why he should yield the legitimate throne to his cousins. The Pandavas grew up far from the capital in forest hermitages. Their youth spent gathering roots, studying scriptures, and performing daily fire rituals. They never participated in ministerial councils, city budgeting, or diplomatic negotiations with neighbouring states. They lack practical experience in governing Hastinapura's administrative machinery. To Duryodhana, they remain outsiders, claiming power solely through birthright and divine favour. The conflict between the two branches of the lunar dynasty intensifies due to earthly political ambitions and the skillful whispers of advisors. A key instigator is the Kaurava's uncle, the ruler of Gandhara, named Shakuni. Historians still debate his true motives. Some believe he acted to avenge old family grievances after his sister was forcibly married to the blind king Dhritarashtra. Others see him as a pragmatic politician, aiming to weaken Hastinapura by provoking internal strife. Your right to rule is based on law, years of effort, and the support of the army, Shakuni quietly tells his nephew during a secret council, leaning close to his shoulder. These hermits return to the palace only to reap the fruits of your labor. If you show weakness now, tomorrow they will seize the kingdom, cleverly hiding behind the will of the gods and prophecies. The state cannot tolerate weakness, O king. Power belongs to those who can hold it. Duryodhana listens closely, and seeds of doubt fall upon his wounded pride. The dismantling of a black and white worldview brings the mythological text closer to historical reality. The authors reveal how past events are often presented one-sidedly. Victors rewrite chronicles, concealing true causes of conflict and demonizing the defeated. The reader begins to empathize with figures the epic labeled as villains. It becomes clear that in a civil war, there are no purely right sides. Each faction defends its truth, shedding rivers of blood to preserve status, territory, and political influence. Within this political system, the older generation holds a special place. Their impeccable reputation, social authority, and blind loyalty to ancient oaths paradoxically inflict the greatest harm on the state. Their steadfast refusal to adapt to changing circumstances deprives young rulers of opportunities for peaceful compromise. The fate of the great warrior Bhishma stands as a vivid example of such destructive idealism. Originally named Devavrata, he was the rightful heir to the throne of prosperous Hastinapura. His father, King Shantanu, once encountered a girl named Satyavati on the banks of the Yamuna River. She was the daughter of a local fisherman chief, and the king wished to marry her. However, the girl's father, aware of his advantageous position, imposed a strict condition. The crown must pass only to a child born of his daughter. Shantanu fell into deep despair. He did not want to deprive his eldest son of his rightful inheritance, but could not refuse Satyavati either. Days passed with the grey-haired king withdrawing to his chambers, refusing food, company, and state affairs. Learning the cause of his father's sorrow, Devavrata personally travelled to the fisherman's village. There, before common folk and unseen spirits, he voluntarily renounced his claim to the throne. Moreover, to prevent any future disputes over succession, he vowed lifelong celibacy. For this act, the heavens named him Bhishma, meaning formidable. The original epic praises this step as the ideal of filial devotion. Ancient texts describe flower petals falling from the skies and deities applauding the prince's nobility. Yet, a modern reinterpretation presents this vow not as an act of self-sacrifice, but as an expression of pride that bound the fates of generations. Bhishma's renunciation sets off a long chain of dynastic crises. Satyavati's sons die one after another without leaving direct heirs. The state teeters on the brink of collapse. The throne remains vacant, and the legitimate line of succession is broken. Palace corridors fill with whispers of conspirators, and neighbouring kingdoms begin amassing troops at the borders, sensing Hastinapura's political weakness. Some scholars argue that elevating a personal vow above all else contradicts the fundamental principle of governance, where the welfare of the people should take precedence over individual righteousness. However, he binds himself with a promise to always protect the one who sits on the throne, regardless of that ruler's moral character or political abilities. As a result, the great warrior becomes a prisoner of his own words. The elder possesses immense physical strength, unquestioned authority among the nobility, and profound wisdom. Yet he voluntarily deprives himself of the right to make crucial decisions. He is forced to watch as his descendants make mistakes, ruin the state's economy, and provoke neighbouring powers, all while obediently carrying out their orders. "I have chained myself to this throne with the bonds of my own vow," the grey-haired elder says bitterly, gazing across the empty council hall. "I have outlived those I loved, and now must serve rulers I despise. My immortality has become my curse, and my righteousness has only sown chaos in this house." He watches helplessly as his vast family slowly fractures. He attends councils and witnesses palace intrigues unfold, while the rivalry between cousins intensifies relentlessly. His wise counsel is often ignored by young princes intoxicated by power and ambition. The elder remains bound by the oath he took many years ago on the riverbank. His figure takes on deeply tragic dimensions, becoming a living monument to a bygone era. By his presence, he legitimizes any action taken by the ruling elite, thereby deepening the political deadlock. He could seize power himself, impose order with a firm hand, and prevent the looming disaster. But his fear of breaking his vow outweighs common sense. This tragedy of duty taken to its extreme stands as a stark example of how rigid adherence to rules can cause irreparable harm. The narrative carefully details the mechanism of this catastrophe, showing how one person's idealism, elevated to an unquestionable dogma, becomes the cause of suffering for thousands. The common people of Hastinapura, artisans, farmers, and merchants, become unwilling hostages to political instability. They faithfully pay taxes, cultivate fields along the banks of the Ganges, and expect protection from external threats, but receive only a weak authority torn by internal conflicts. The constant threat of civil war paralyzes trade routes, drains the state treasury, and fills peasants with anxiety about the future. Fear seeps into every home, disrupting the familiar way of life. The destructive consequences of blind loyalty to rules affect all layers of society. They poison the atmosphere at court, where every action is measured not by its real benefit to the country, but by ancient treatises and formal oaths. This distorted framework inevitably warps the minds of those forced to live by its harsh laws. The burden of others' vows weighs heavily, not only on rulers, ministers, and celebrated generals, but also on those originally called to preserve spiritual purity, accumulate wisdom, and pass sacred knowledge to future generations. Forced to serve a weak authority, spiritual mentors lose their independence. They become mere hired servants, whose talents are used solely to prepare for future conflicts. A striking example of this transformation is the fate of the Brahmin Drona. Translations of ancient Sanskrit texts describe how this sage originally lived as a forest ascetic, dedicating his days to studying sacred hymns and perfecting his spirit. Tradition dictates that priests embrace voluntary poverty and renounce worldly ambitions. A true sage should live in a secluded hermitage, subsisting on modest offerings from nearby villagers and imparting knowledge to students without demanding payment. Yet Drona possessed a unique gift that set him apart from other hermits. He mastered the divine art of wielding sacred weapons, knowledge he received from the legendary Parashurama himself. This skill made him incredibly valuable to rulers constantly seeking to strengthen their armies. Classical epics portray him as a deeply respected guru, whose wisdom is unquestioned and whose actions are motivated solely by care for his students. However, the novel offers a different perspective, focusing on his gradual social decline. This downfall stems from a personal grievance rooted in the distant past. In his youth, Drona shared food and blood with the heir to the Panchala throne, Prince Drupada. The boys studied together under the same teacher, and the future ruler carelessly promised to share his kingdom with his friend after ascending the throne. Years later, the impoverished Brahmin came to the palace gates of his old companion, hoping to receive even a single cow to feed his wife and young son Ashwatthama, who cried from hunger, mistaking flour mixed with water for real milk. Surrounded by luxury and courtiers' flattery, Drupada mocked the poor petitioner. The king declared that friendship was possible only between equals in status, and a poor priest could not call the ruler his brother. This public humiliation broke Drona's spirit. Instead of forgiving the offender as a true sage should, Drona allowed his thirst for revenge to consume his mind. He left the fertile lands of Panchala with a single purpose: to raise invincible warriors capable of crushing the enemy army and bringing the arrogant king to his knees. Seeking powerful patrons, Drona arrived at the court of Hastinapura. The great elder Bhishma, recognizing the newcomer's military talent, hired him to train the young princes, the Pandavas and Kauravas. From that moment, the independent Brahmin became an ordinary court servant. He received fine clothes, a spacious house in the capital, and a regular salary, but in exchange, he surrendered his freedom forever. The machinery of state gradually grinds down his inner principles. Drona no longer selects students based on their character or capacity for compassion. He is required to train those appointed by the ruling dynasty. The sage methodically imparts secrets of controlling destructive energies, to young men whose hearts are already poisoned by jealousy and claims to the throne. He clearly sees the growing hostility between cousins and understands the inevitability of the coming bloody conflict, but continues forging the perfect weapons for the impending civil war. He pays special attention to Arjuna, the third son of King Pandu. The boy shows incredible perseverance, spending nights training in archery. Drona decides to pass on to him the most guarded secrets, including the invocation of the Brahmastra, a weapon capable of devastating entire cities and poisoning the land for decades. During one exhausting training session on a dusty range, when the targets are already pierced through, the teacher addresses his best student. The weapons of the gods do not distinguish between right and wrong. Arjuna, he says, handing over the heavy war bow, by wielding this power, you take responsibility for the ashes left behind. Remember, one day you will have to choose between the duty of a warrior and the voice of your heart, and either choice will bring pain. These words sound like a grim prophecy. The mentor fully realizes the scale of the destructive force he is entrusting to a mortal, yet his wounded pride and desire to prove his superiority over Drupada override his better judgment. Through this character, the authors deeply explore the tragedy of a man who traded spiritual independence for high social status. Drona's story vividly illustrates how the state system exploits personal weaknesses to achieve its geopolitical aims. The desire for revenge for an old grievance turns the wise man into a compliant cog in the machinery of power. He trains soldiers who will later raise their weapons not only against each other, but also against him in the decisive battle. Abandoning his original ideals for comfort and status at court sets in motion a chain of events that inevitably leads to a global crisis. This voluntary shift from a free thinker to a highly paid mercenary echoes the fates of other characters in the epic. The rigid hierarchy of ancient society breaks not only those at the top of power, but also those born without the right to a dignified place among noble families. According to ancient Vedic texts, a person's birth determined their entire life path, social circle, and right to bear arms. Into this harsh social paradigm was cast Karna, son of the sun god Surya and the young princess Kunti. Abandoned by his mother in infancy out of fear of disgrace, the boy grew up in the household of a simple charioteer, far from palaces and warrior training. His childhood passed among stables and dusty roads. The sounds of battle horns were replaced by the creak of wooden wheels. The classic epic Mahabharata describes in detail his repeated attempts to prove his noble origin and earn the right to fight alongside princes. However, in the novel, this character becomes not just an ambitious warrior, but a central figure embodying deep social injustice. The authors portray the formation of a personality forced to prove daily his right to exist within a strict caste system. Karna possesses innate talent and divine gifts, including a golden armor and earrings fused to his body. These artifacts make him invulnerable, yet they cannot break through the invisible wall of caste prejudice. In a society where status is inherited by blood, a talented youth from a lower Varna is doomed to constant humiliation. At tournaments, Brahmins refuse to acknowledge him as their equal, demanding he loudly declare his ancestors' names before the crowd. The Pandavas openly mock the charioteer's son, contemptuously pointing him to his place among servants. The hero seeks recognition and naturally finds support among the enemies of his true family. The eldest of the Kauravas, Duryodhana, publicly grants him the title of King of Anger. This political gesture forever binds Karna with ties of gratitude to those whom tradition calls villains. Accepting the crown, Karna becomes a loyal ally of Duryodhana and vows to protect his interests at any cost. Years later, as preparations for the Great War enter their final phase, a key event unfolds. At the critical moment before the battle, Krishna and Kunti visit Karna, one after another, to reveal the secret of his birth. Ancient texts often present such scenes with a tone of gentle sadness, but the novel treats the visit quite differently. It is not a touching reunion of a lost family, but a carefully planned and harsh psychological blow. The manipulator uses this information as a weapon, designed to break the spirit of the great warrior on the eve of the decisive battle. "Your brothers, the Pandavas," Krishna says, watching Karna's reaction closely. "Join their side, and Yudhishthira will yield to you the throne of Hastinapura as the eldest. Draupadi will become your wife, and the Brahmins will sing hymns in your honor. Your name will be remembered as that of the rightful ruler. You will have everything you dreamed of in your youth, standing behind the archery range." Karna refuses to betray Duryodhana, who supported him during his years of obscurity. But the seed of doubt has already been sown. Learning the truth, the hero loses his main inner support, the righteous anger of an outcast. He realizes he has hated his own brothers for many years, and his desire to surpass Arjuna loses its original meaning, turning into fratricide. The authors reveal the mercilessness of the divine plan. To preserve the overall balance and ensure victory for the chosen side, higher powers cynically exploit a person's childhood traumas. Karna becomes a pawn in a larger political game. The deity orchestrates a situation where the noblest and most generous warrior finds himself trapped. Kunti extracts a promise from him to spare all the Pandavas except Arjuna. Thus, the mother effectively ties her firstborn's hands before battle, depriving him of the chance for full engagement. Karna agrees, knowing this decision will cost him his life. The use of personal tragedy for political ends reaches its peak here. Karna's story shows how stigmatization serves those who control historical processes. Higher powers artificially maintain social tension to channel accumulated aggression at the right moment. Karna could have become a ruler who united warring clans, but the divine scenario demands a different outcome. Superhumans must disappear, and to achieve this, they must be set against each other. The ideal warrior becomes an obstacle that must be removed. The hidden tension, accumulated over decades, bursts forth during a public clash of interests. Every humiliation endured by the charioteer's son in youth, every contemptuous glance from the nobility, all become fuel for the coming war. The author demonstrates the mechanics of mass control through individual suffering. The gods do not give direct orders. They create conditions under which people take up arms themselves, believing in the righteousness of their cause. Karna's tragedy lies in the awareness of his own doom. He enters the battlefield already knowing he defends a doomed side, and understanding that his mother and divine protector have sacrificed him for the victory of his younger brothers. The collapse of illusions inevitably intensifies the conflict. This confrontation reaches its peak in the lavish halls of Hastinapura's assembly, where one of the most famous scenes of the ancient Indian epic unfolds: the game of dice. In ancient India, the game of dice was not merely a pastime. It had a sacred character, representing a duel of destinies, a challenge that a kshatriya could not refuse. The Pandavas, accepting this challenge, succumbed to gambling and persuasion, gradually losing their kingdom, personal freedom, and finally their shared wife, Draupadi. Traditional texts describe this event as a direct consequence of King Yudhishthira's fatal passion for gambling and the unmatched cunning of his opponent, Shakuni. According to the classic version, Shakuni used special dice that always fell the desired way, obeying his master's will. The son of the god of justice throws the dice again and again, hoping to recover, but only sinks deeper into debt. Duryodhana triumphs, witnessing the fall of his arrogant relatives. However, the novel offers a completely different interpretation of these events. This episode is portrayed as a carefully staged spectacle, where every participant's move is predetermined and chance is entirely excluded. Krishna, possessing omniscience, deliberately allows this public humiliation of his allies. The higher plan demands making the future clash inevitable, cutting off all paths of retreat for the Pandavas. If the conflict had been resolved peacefully, or the brothers had simply gone into exile without deep personal offense, the large-scale war might never have occurred. The manipulator lets events reach a critical point, coldly observing from the sidelines. The palace pavilion, decorated with gold and precious stones, becomes the site of shattered human destinies. When Draupadi is dragged into the assembly hall by force, the situation goes beyond usual court intrigues. The authors describe in detail the heavy silence hanging over those present. A woman accustomed to reverence and respect is pulled by her hair before the entire court, subjected to an unprecedented insult. "You are the guardians of the law, sitting on these benches," Draupadi declares, standing in torn clothes in the middle of the hall. You speak of righteousness but remain silent while injustice unfolds before your eyes. Your righteousness is empty if it permits the humiliation of a woman in the name of following the rules. None of the venerable elders find the strength to respond. They avert their eyes in silence. Bhishma, Drona, and other respected sages are immobilized by rigid formalities. Yudhishthira has lost her according to the law. Therefore, any intervention would be seen as a violation of ancient codes. This drifting morality becomes evident when unquestioned authorities remain silent, allowing blatant injustice under the guise of strict adherence to rules. The elders choose to preserve their dignity and protocol at the cost of a living person's honor. From a modern ethical perspective, this episode illustrates a complex historical shift from archaic might-based law toward a more developed system of legal and moral standards, where the letter of the law often conflicts with the spirit of justice. Early Vedic texts describe the game of dice as a dangerous yet socially accepted pastime for rulers, closely linked to the distribution of wealth and ritual practices. Later versions of the epic shift focus to the moral choices of the participants and the devastating consequences of gambling addiction. The narrative returns to cold political calculation, posing a stark question. Why does divine intervention preserve Draupadi's honor only after the point of no return, when hatred has already taken root? The original myth recounts how Krishna makes Draupadi's sari endless, preventing her enemies from exposing her. In the context of the story, this miracle occurs precisely when the conflict reaches a critical level. The deity does not prevent the initial humiliation, but halts it at a stage that guarantees the severing of all familial bonds. Had the protection come earlier, the Pandavas might have found it within themselves to forgive their offenders. Now, however, the insult demands inevitable retribution. The humiliation endured in the royal hall triggers an irreversible transformation in the exiled rulers. Stripped of wealth, weapons, and status, the brothers are forced to leave their familiar lands and embark on a prolonged exile. This harsh shift from palace luxury to hardship changes their psychology. They cease to be merely noble princes bound by caste duties and gradually become individuals consumed by a relentless desire to restore their dishonored reputation. This artificially created crisis works flawlessly, shaping the perfect instrument for the forthcoming war. Every detail of this event functions as a crucial cog in the vast mechanism preparing for a global conflict. Witnesses to the game will spread news of the Pandavas' disgrace across neighbouring kingdoms. Rulers of other lands will be compelled to take sides, assessing the legitimacy of the Kauravas' actions. Thus, a local family dispute escalates into a major geopolitical crisis, involving the interests of dozens of states. The narrative convincingly demonstrates that the most destructive conflicts often begin not on battlefields, but in the quiet of ceremonial halls, beneath the steady roll of dice. Leaving Hastinapura, the exiles carry with them a hidden resolve to reclaim what was lost at any cost, fully aligning with the expectations of an unseen orchestrator. According to the terms of their lost game, the sons of Pandu must spend the next 13 years away from civilization. Classical tradition describes this long period of forest exile as a time of deep asceticism, encounters with revered sages, and spiritual purification. Texts tell of the exiles humbly heeding philosophical teachings, subsisting on roots, and gradually shedding worldly attachments. However, the authors of this novel offer a different perspective. In their interpretation, the wild forest becomes a secret military camp, and spiritual practices serve merely as a cover for meticulous planning of future revenge. The harsh conditions of survival in the wilderness, constant search for food, and protection from predators forged the former princes into flawless instruments of vengeance. While the brothers establish their lives among the trees, Krishna undertakes an invisible yet highly active role. The prince of the Yadavas does not share the hardships of exile, but travels extensively across the continent as a skilled negotiator. Visiting the courts of powerful rulers in Panchala and Matsya, he holds lengthy private discussions, assesses the resources of potential allies, and weaves a complex web of secret agreements. Through his efforts, the personal grievance of the five brothers is methodically transformed into a global political crisis. Krishna expertly exploits old rivalries between states, promising fertile lands to some rulers, while intimidating others with the expanding influence of Hastinapura. Thus, the local dynastic rift begins to draw in new armies, forming two vast opposing camps. There is an intriguing hypothesis that the 13-year exile was required by higher powers not to test the hero's virtues, but solely to prepare the grand stage for war. During this time, a new generation of warriors grows up, unaware of previous peace treaties, while old alliances have completely dissolved. Years of hardship inevitably change the Pandavas themselves. Youth and innate nobility gradually give way to cold calculation. Prolonged exposure to constant danger erodes their former selves, systematically burning away their capacity for compassion. This transformation from victim to relentless avenger is most evident in the actions of the third brother. Arjuna leaves the forest camp and embarks on a long journey to the snowy peaks of the Himalayas, seeking the abodes of divine beings. Tradition holds that he seeks divine weapons to understand the higher mysteries of the universe. In the novel, however, his goal is pragmatic and ruthless. He requires tools for mass destruction of his enemies. By acquiring devastating artifacts, such as the weapon of Pashupata, he prepares not for an honourable duel, but for a future slaughter where mercy will have no place. Your hands have hardened from the bowstring, and your mind is armoured, Krishna observes when visiting Arjuna after his return from the mountains. You are no longer the youth who averted his gaze at others' suffering in the palace halls. Now you are ready to fulfill your duty. My duty is now measured by the number of enemy chariots I can turn to ashes, the warrior replies quietly, handling heavy arrowheads. The forest has taught me the main rule of survival. If you don't strike first, your line disappears without a trace. I will leave no one alive who stood silently in the throne room and watched our humiliation. The psychology of the exiles shows how time spent waiting alters human nature. The hatred accumulated over years of wandering takes deep root in the minds of every family member. Yudhishthira, the son of the god of justice, once known for his gentleness and inclination to forgive, now spends his evenings drawing troop formations in the damp sand. Bhima trains daily with a heavy iron mace, crushing ancient tree trunks and imagining the heads of his cousins in their place. The younger brothers, Nakula and Sahadeva, hone their swordsmanship to perfection, preparing to shed blood. They no longer seek paths to reconciliation. Each morning begins with vivid recollections of the insults suffered, and each night ends with oaths of vengeance. The novel's authors emphasize that prolonged, suppressed anger makes peaceful conflict resolution physically impossible. The higher powers watching from above receive the outcome they planned from the very start. The Pandavas become perfect weapons, free from doubt and ready to cross any moral boundary to achieve their goal. Although formal attempts at negotiation will still be made in the future, each of the brothers has already made their final choice deep within. The wildness of nature has stripped away their youthful illusions, leaving only a cold determination to reclaim their throne, even if it means plunging the entire continent into the chaos of a fratricidal war. Preparations are complete, pieces are set in new positions, and the time of exile inexorably approaches its logical conclusion. The moment has come when the hidden tension demands official resolution at the state level. Krishna, ruler of the Yadavas, leaves his camp and heads to the capital city of Hastinapur as an official envoy. His journey is marked by the utmost ceremony. Along the route, local inhabitants come out to meet the chariot, offering rich gifts and sincerely hoping to hear words of consolation. The palace halls of the capital are adorned in advance with garlands of fresh flowers. Expensive incense burns everywhere. Brahmin hymns of welcome resonate. Outwardly, everything appears to be a genuine visit aimed at preserving a fragile balance. According to ancient Indian epics, this episode is interpreted in a straightforward way. The all-good God does everything possible to prevent the impending conflict. Tradition holds that he arrived solely to save lives, attempting to reason with rulers who had lost touch with reality. However, the authors of the novel offer a very different interpretation of these negotiations. In their view, the envoy is already aware of the inevitable failure of his mission and uses it as a subtle tool of political pressure. Krishna enters the spacious throne room not as a petitioner, but as a skilled strategist. The hall is packed to capacity. Influential kings sit on the carved wooden benches. Renowned warriors and advisors fill the space. At the centre, on a raised platform, sits the old blind king Dhritarashtra, beside whom stands his eldest son, Duryodhana. Nearby, the cunning uncle Shakuni smirks knowingly. The strategist is well informed about the internal structure of this state, the father's fears, and the son's political ambitions. The terms the guest puts forward sound deceptively modest. He asks for only 5 small villages for the exiled brothers, publicly renouncing claims to half of the vast empire. To an uninitiated listener in the crowd, this sounds like the greatest act of humility and willingness to compromise. But Duryodhana, a talented administrator, instantly reads the hidden threat. Granting even a tiny piece of land would mean legal recognition of the brothers' rights to power. It would legitimize their return to the political arena. In a growing crisis, such a step would inevitably lead to doubts among vassals, uprisings on the periphery, and the gradual disintegration of the unified state. "You ask for little in words, O ruler of the 2 realms," Duryodhana says, leaning heavily on his famous iron mace. "But behind your request lies the destruction of all we have built over these many years. To give 5 villages means acknowledging the legitimacy of their claims to the throne. My duty as ruler demands protecting the integrity of our borders. I will not give them even as much land as fits on the tip of a needle, for any concession now will spell the downfall of the kingdom tomorrow." Krishna listens to this refusal with unshakable calm. Not a muscle twitches on his face. In the novel, this response is not seen as a sign of the prince's blind stubbornness, but as the expected outcome of a carefully planned provocation. The divine manipulator presents demands that the opponent physically cannot accept without losing face and control over the country. Thus, the responsibility for the future destruction is elegantly shifted onto Duryodhana's shoulders. A complex exchange of veiled threats begins in the throne room. Envoys hide their true intentions behind impeccable diplomatic courtesy. Every word Krishna utters is precisely measured. Every gesture is calculated solely for the audience, the great elders present, such as Bhishma and Drona, and the silent sage Vidura. These respected figures watch silently, fully aware that before their eyes unfolds a cruel spectacle designed to justify any future military actions. Krishna's art of political manipulation reveals how the image of an irreconcilable enemy is created in history. The novel exposes the very mechanics of preparing for a global conflict. Formal attempts at reconciliation serve only as a necessary state ritual. This process is meant to soothe the conscience of one's own allies before the onset of total destruction. The soldiers who will soon take the battlefield must firmly believe they bear arms only because the enemy rejected peaceful overtures. The blame for spilled blood must rest solely on the rulers of Hastinapur, lifting the moral burden from the brothers. The collapse of diplomatic efforts is officially declared when Krishna leaves the palace, leaving behind a divided society gripped by a heavy sense of impending disaster. The illusion of a peaceful choice finally dissolves in the dust of the roads. 2 massive armies, numbering millions of warriors, thousands of war chariots, and armoured elephants, begin to converge on the vast plain of Kurukshetra. Countless tents are already set up, and campfires burn. The sounds of war conch shells and drums echo across the plain, drowning out voices of reason. Rulers from across the continent bring their forces, taking positions according to previously forged alliances and family ties. The war machine, set in motion long before these negotiations, gains full momentum, ready to grind human destinies. The last doubts of mortals are mercilessly suppressed by a higher will, demanding a sweeping renewal of the world through the complete removal of an entire generation of mighty warriors. Dawn's rays illuminate the endless plain, where ranks of infantry, heavy cavalry, and war chariots stand tense, awaiting the first strike. The air is thick with dust stirred by millions of feet and the scent of anxiety. At the very centre of this space, on the neutral ground between the 2 poised armies, a war chariot slowly comes to a stop. This chariot, drawn by a team of 4 white horses, was once gifted to the hero by the god of fire, Agni. Above it flies a banner depicting the Monkey King Hanuman. The chariot is driven by Krishna, prince of the Yadava tribe, who has taken on the humble role of charioteer. Behind him stands Arjuna, a celebrated commander and the finest archer of his time. Traditionally, this moment is regarded as the beginning of the greatest spiritual dialogue in Indian philosophy, known as the Bhagavad Gita, found in the 6th book of the Mahabharata. According to classical texts, the hero experiences profound turmoil, realizing the gravity of the coming fratricide. Arjuna's gaze scans the enemy ranks, searching for familiar crests on their shields. Instead of a faceless mass of foes, he recognizes the faces of his grandfathers, respected mentors, cousins, and childhood friends with whom he shared palace games in Hastinapur. The heavy warbow Gandiva slips from his weakening fingers. The great warrior sinks to the floor of the chariot, refusing to signal the start of bloodshed. The novel offers a completely different interpretation of this canonical episode, shifting the focus from divine revelation to an act of direct coercion. The writers strip the scene of its usual reverent awe. Time on the battlefield suddenly halts. Arrows loosed for target practice freeze in mid-air. The clinking of bronze harnesses falls silent. The wind ceases to stir the silk banners. The war conches and drums that called to battle go quiet. Millions of people stand motionless like stone statues. In this absolute, unnatural silence, Krishna reveals to the warrior his true cosmic form, known in the Vedic tradition as Vishvarupa. In the context of the book, this event is not portrayed as a gracious gift of supreme knowledge to a worthy disciple. Instead, the deity reveals an overwhelming and terrifying power solely to break the will of a doubting mortal. A person's conscience, their natural reluctance to raise arms against their own kin, suddenly becomes a significant obstacle to the realization of a grand celestial plan that demands the immediate initiation of war. The human mind struggles to bear the vision unfolding before it. Arjuna sees a many-armed, many-faced being whose fiery mouths consume entire worlds. Within this blazing maw, rulers from both armies are drawn in, doomed to destruction. In despair, Arjuna cries out, quote 0. He tries to turn away from the blinding light, quote 1. He laments. The deity's response is not a philosophical teaching, but a cold, unquestionable decree from the architect of the universe. Quote 2. The divine voice insists, overpowering the last traces of resistance with its majesty. Quote 3. This interpretation of the ancient text through the lens of psychological pressure offers profound material for reflection. The narrative provokes a complex debate about the limits of divine intervention in human affairs. It raises the question, is duty to the cosmos, the so-called Dharma, more important than an individual's internal moral law? Does a higher power have the right to strip a mortal of free will to fulfill a vast historical plan aimed at the planet's purification? In the original scriptures and philosophical treatises of the Upanishads, submission to the Creator's will is described as the only true path to spiritual liberation from the cycle of rebirth. However, the novel reveals the dark underside of this process. It shows the transformation of a thinking, empathetic human into a powerless tool of destruction. Arjuna ultimately loses the ability to act according to his own conscience. His natural human doubts are crushed by the absolute authority of an omnipotent being. When time returns to its usual flow, the hero obediently lifts his bow. But this is no longer the independent prince who sought justice through years of exile. Outwardly unchanged, his will is now entirely subordinated to another's plan. Devoid of personal initiative and blinded by an imposed sense of unshakable duty, the warriors charge into battle. From this moment on, all previous notions of martial honor and nobility vanish from the vast battlefield of Kurukshetra. Strict rules of righteous combat, which had regulated the lives of warriors for centuries, are cast aside as unnecessary. To achieve the divinely ordained goal, any means, even the most unscrupulous, are deemed acceptable. The greatest authorities of the past, who had remained faithful to their ideals, soon become victims of a massive deception dictated by higher necessity. The great battle itself turns into a methodical, merciless slaughter, where each strike is guided not by human hands, but by the cold calculations of unseen puppeteers playing a cruel game. The offensive formations of the Kaurava army are led by Bhishma and Drona, two patriarchs whose mastery of warfare has been honed over decades. They systematically crush the enemy ranks, demonstrating an unparalleled level of weapon skill. Their tactical maneuvers drive opposing commanders to despair. Bhishma, gifted with the ability to choose the moment of his own departure from the world, stands as an example of an invincible general. His heavy war chariot, drawn by white horses, moves freely across the vast battlefield, leaving wide paths through the attacking ranks. Foot soldiers scatter in terror before his banner, which bears the image of a golden palm. Fighting alongside him is Drona, a Brahmin who possesses the secrets of celestial weapons. This sage applies ancient knowledge learned in secluded forest retreats from the great wise man Parashurama, driving entire units into retreat. Traditional spears, swords, and arrows prove utterly ineffective against these warriors, protected by years of experience and divine blessings. The Mahabharata texts describe how the Pandavas, on the brink of total defeat, turn to Krishna for counsel. It is he who suggests using cunning tactics that violate the rules of honourable combat, known as Dharma Yuddha. In the novel, these pivotal events are stripped of any heroic aura. They are depicted as acts of dirty betrayal, born of desperation and political expediency. Bhishma falls under a hail of arrows shot by Arjuna, who hides behind a warrior named Shikandi. According to ancient legends, Shikandi was once a woman, Princess Amba, who spent years in harsh penance to seek revenge against Bhishma for ruining her reputation and preventing her marriage. Reborn in a male body, the warrior retains part of the feminine nature. Bhishma's code forbids him from raising weapons against a woman or anyone who once was one. Knowing this vulnerability, the brothers cynically use Shikandi as a reliable living shield. The great elder lowers his bow and accepts the many arrows piercing his body. He falls from his chariot, but does not touch the ground, lying on a bed of arrows while awaiting an auspicious astrological moment to complete his earthly journey. The removal of the commander does not bring immediate victory, as leadership passes to Drona. The Brahmin fights with renewed vigour, arranging troops in complex geometric formations known as vyuha. These living labyrinths of infantry and chariots grind down advancing units. Overcoming such multi-layered defences without divine aid is nearly impossible. To break his resistance, an even more cunning plan is devised. Krishna convinces the Pandavas to exploit the teacher's deep attachment to his only son, Ashvatthama. In Vedic culture, having a son ensures proper funeral rites and the salvation of ancestors. Therefore, the loss of an heir is a father's greatest tragedy. Bhima locates and kills a massive war elephant bearing the same name as Drona's son, then loudly announces Ashvatthama's death. The teacher refuses to believe the cries until Yudhishthira confirms them. The eldest Pandava is renowned for his absolute honesty. His war chariot always hovers above the ground, as a symbol of his exceptional righteousness.
Tell me the truth, O king. Is my boy alive? Can I continue the fight, or has my voice failed me? Asks the weary Drona, halting his horses amid the fierce battle. Driven by Krishna's unwavering will, Yudhishthira utters the fatal phrase. He loudly confirms Ashwatthama's death, quietly adding the word elephant, which is intentionally drowned out by the thunder of war drums and the long blasts of conch shells. Hearing this falsehood from the most righteous man on earth, Drona loses all will to live. He lays down his bow, sits at the bottom of his chariot, and sinks into deep meditation. At this moment, Dhristadyumna, son of King Drupada, breaks all rules of warfare by beheading the defenseless elder. This episode marks the final destruction of the old world and its noble warrior ideals. The novel thoroughly examines the cost of victory, posing a difficult ethical question about the limits of what is permissible. When the righteous begin to employ unscrupulous methods to achieve their goals, they irreversibly lose their moral purity. Immediately after the spoken falsehood, Yudhishthira's chariot heavily descends onto the blood-soaked earth. This visual image symbolizes the collapse of the universal law and the loss of divine grace that once shielded the ruler from the corrupt material world. The line between heroes and villains blurs amid the blood and mud of Kurukshetra. Those who once called themselves defenders of justice commit acts that were unthinkable for noble rulers. The destruction of the bearers of ancient ideals marks a turning point in the battle. The Kaurava army, having lost its main protectors and authorities, loses morale and begins to retreat. Yet the tactical advantage gained offers the Pandavas no true relief. By trampling their own principles, they become the very destroyers of order they originally sought to oppose.
The narrative emphasizes that the betrayal of teachers and family leaves an indelible mark on the victors' souls. The warriors are forced to continue their bloody path, fully aware that their impending triumph is built entirely on dishonorable deception and weakness. The weight of their actions presses heavily on their conscience, gradually eroding the remnants of former nobility. The idealized image of knights shatters, revealing confused individuals who sacrificed their honor to fulfill someone else's grand plan. A supreme necessity, dictated by direct divine intervention, demands a complete abandonment of human compassion, turning the battlefield into a place where hope for a just society finally dies. The conflict ends with near total annihilation of combatants on both sides. From millions who gathered on the plains, only a handful remain breathing. 18 days of relentless clashing weapons, cries of fury, neighing horses, and the thunder of war chariots give way to a ringing silence. The Pandavas seize power and reclaim the throne. However, they must rule over devastated lands and grieving widows. The scene painted is devoid of triumph. The 5 brothers wander the fields strewn with bodies, feeling no joy in their victory. Beneath their feet crunch the shattered remnants of spears, broken shields, and ornaments of former rulers. The earth has turned into a bloody mire. The air is heavy with the scent of sorrow, causing the victors to turn away from the consequences of their own unyielding resolve. In search of their relatives' bodies, they come upon the torn remains of war elephants and broken banners that once proudly led the regiments. This victory comes at the cost of the future. The texts mention how Ashwathama, the surviving son of the fallen Drona, launches a nighttime raid on the sleeping camp of the victors. Driven by a thirst for vengeance for his father, he sneaks under the cover of darkness into the tents and ruthlessly kills all the sons of the Pandavas, along with the remnants of their army. Using a deadly weapon, he burns the camp to ashes. This nighttime episode robs the brothers of hope for their lineage and the continuation of their rule. At dawn, Yudhishthira, the empire's sovereign, stands among the mutilated bodies of his own children, grasping the gravity of the divine plan. The price for maintaining cosmic order is higher than earthly ambitions. "Whose victory is this, tell me?" Arjuna mutters quietly, lowering his bow onto the damp earth. "We fought for years for the right to live, yet all we have is a vast cemetery. Our sons lie in coffins. Our mentors have fallen by our own hands. We gained a crown, but lost everything that made us human. Was it worth shedding rivers of blood just to rule over ashes? Could this have been the heavenly design the sages spoke of in the forests?" Yudhishthira finds no words to answer, only tightening his cloak against the wind. At this moment, the victors come to understand their role. They realize that for years they were mere instruments, puppets whose strings were pulled by a dark instigator. Their grievances, political ambitions, and desires to restore justice fueled the mechanism of a global purge. Krishna, standing nearby, remains silent, observing the results of his work. His task is complete. The warrior caste, once a threat to the world's balance through its power, has destroyed itself, clearing the way for a new historical era. The divine plan unfolds down to the smallest detail, and now the world faces a long period of recovery. The reign of new rulers begins with funeral pyres. From all corners of the shattered land, women who have lost husbands, fathers, and brothers gather at the Kurukshetra field. Their wails merge into a single hum that echoes over the plain, drowning out any attempts at consolation. The Pandavas personally conduct farewell rituals, lighting the fires atop carefully arranged logs as customs dictate.
Smoke from thousands of pyres rises to the sky, obscuring the sun over Hastinapura. Priests chant mantras, seeking to ensure the fallen warriors' souls pass honourably into the next world. This moment is highlighted as the ash settles on the faces and garments of the rulers, becoming a physical embodiment of their guilt. Each spark soaring upward carries away a fragment of the departed era, leaving the survivors with emptiness. Such a dismantling of triumph reveals the illusory nature of military achievements. The narrative asserts that in conflicts there are no true victors. Only survivors remain, burdened with the memory of allowing higher powers to play this game. The return to the capital is without procession, hymns, or floral garlands that usually greet conquerors. The palace of Hastinapura welcomes its rulers with the echo of empty corridors and the wary glances of servants who dare not meet the eyes of the new masters, seeing only harbingers of sorrow. In the throne room,
No longer do advisors debate, and the treasury is depleted from war expenses. The old blind king Dhritarashtra, who lost his 100 sons in this slaughter, receives the victors with a show of humility. He embraces the brothers, hiding in his heart the pain of loss and thirst for revenge. Living together under one roof turns life in the palace into a psychological torment. The Pandavas strive to rebuild the shattered economy, restore governance, and bring a semblance of normal life to the people. They enact new laws, distribute land among surviving peasants, and attempt to reopen trade routes. Yet the shadow of Kurukshetra haunts every decision they make. The devastated world slowly begins to heal the wounds inflicted by divine intervention. Meanwhile, the architect of this carnage, having completed his mission on Earth, prepares to face the consequences of his deeds. The law of cause and effect applies equally to all beings in the universe. Krishna's mission is fully accomplished. The burden on the land is eased. The old warrior class has departed, making way for a completely new historical era. The Dark Instigator returns to his native domain, the city of Dvaraka, located on the continent's western coast. This city had long been an oasis of prosperity while the rest of the country burned in civil strife. Life among the Yadava tribe flowed steadily. Artisans crafted exquisite jewellery. Merchants struck profitable deals with foreign neighbours, and rulers amassed wealth building spacious stone palaces with carved columns. The streets bustled with carts loaded with grain and cloth, painting a picture of unshakable stability. However, this illusion of security proves short-lived. The law of karma is relentless, and the mechanism of historical retribution is already in motion. Analysing ancient texts reveals an important detail. The fall of great dynasties often begins with internal decay rather than external invasion. According to the Puranas, the demise of the Yadava lineage was foretold by a curse from sages. One day, great ascetics, including Vishvamitra and Narada, visited the vicinity of Dvaraka. The young princes of the Yadava clan decided to deceive the venerable elders for amusement. The fate was sealed by a curse from the sages. Once, great ascetics, including revered figures like Vishvamitra and Narada, visited the region near Dwarka. Young princes from the Yadava clan decided to play a trick on these venerable elders for their own amusement. They disguised a youth named Samba as a pregnant woman, fastening an iron cauldron to his abdomen, and asked the sages what would be born of this woman. Angered by such disrespect, the ascetics declared that an iron mace would emerge, destined to destroy their thriving lineage. Frightened by this prophecy, the rulers ordered the cauldron to be crushed into powder and cast into the ocean, hoping to avert the foretold doom. The waves carried the iron dust ashore, where it grew into thick, sturdy reeds. In the novel, this mythological episode transforms into a depiction of deep social decay. A people unacquainted with the hardships of great war have grown complacent in their peace. A religious festival begins on the ocean's shore at a place called Profasa, accompanied by generous libations of wine made from palm sap. The intoxicating atmosphere loosens tongues, and old grievances resurface. Disputes over the roles various branches of the Yadavas played in the recent conflict between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. What starts as a verbal quarrel quickly escalates into a widespread brawl with knives drawn. The drunken warriors tear up the coastal reeds,
which in their hands become as hard as iron. Relatives mercilessly turn against one another on the sandy shore. Fathers raise their hands against sons, and brothers show no mercy to brothers, erasing their ancient dynasty from the face of the earth within hours. Krishna does not intervene in this slaughter. He watches the destruction of his people with unsettling calm, understanding this to be the inevitable outcome of his own design. After the fratricidal massacre, the ocean stirs. Massive waves rise and engulf magnificent Dwaraka. Architectural masterpieces, temples, marketplaces, and broad avenues disappear beneath the salt water, leaving behind only a smooth sea surface. Nature reclaims the land, erasing all traces of the once mighty Yadava state. The black Balamut, left utterly alone, retreats into the forest. The epic describes his final hours as a time of deep introspection. He lies beneath a banyan tree, entering meditation. At this moment, a local hunter named Jara wanders nearby. Spotting a pinkish foot through the dense foliage, the hunter mistakes it for the muzzle of a hiding deer. He draws his bow and releases an arrow. The arrowhead was forged from the only large piece of iron remaining from the crushed cauldron swallowed by a fish later caught by fishermen. The arrow strikes the single vulnerable spot of the divine incarnation. Jara cries out in horror, rushing to the clearing and realizing his irreversible mistake. "Do not blame yourself, hunter," Krishna replies calmly, looking at the wound. "You have only fulfilled what was ordained by ancient laws. My time has come. This outcome is the natural conclusion of our journey. Go in peace, carrying no guilt in your heart." In this novel, the episode lacks the usual grandiose ascent to the heavens, accompanied by conch shells and celestial choirs. The departure unfolds as a quiet, everyday end to a mortal life. There is no grandeur, no lengthy philosophical discourse. The deity who once dictated the will of mighty kings and moved vast armies across the chessboard of the world meets his end at the hand of an ordinary man in a remote forest. This is a fitting conclusion for one who bore responsibility for the fate of an entire continent. The authors show that the law of cause and effect applies universally. Even a god who took human form and shed rivers of blood to maintain cosmic balance is subject to the rules of the material world. Krishna pays the price for every broken destiny on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, for every political deceit and intrigue. Taking on a physical body makes him vulnerable to the laws of the material realm. The end of the divine manipulator's earthly path sums up an entire era. The players have left the stage, leaving a heavy legacy for future generations. People are forced to rebuild their lives from the ruins of a shattered civilization, striving to learn from history. This process inevitably leads readers to profound philosophical questions that go beyond sympathy for the participants in the dynastic conflict. The story of the Black Balamut leaves a long echo of reflection, slowly settling in the mind. Such an interpretation compels us to pause and ask an uncomfortable question. Does the creator have the right to manipulate lives as if they were pieces on a game board? Does maintaining universal balance justify the suffering, loss, and hardship mortals must endure to fulfill another's plan? When studying the Indian epic from this perspective, it becomes clear that Dharma is not merely a set of ethical norms or rules for the righteous. It is a mechanism of equilibrium, demanding constant sacrifice to sustain the material world's existence. The divine plan is utterly devoid of human sentimentality, attachment, or compassion for individuals. Higher powers act with calculation to restore order. Accordingly, every figure on the political stage performs a strictly assigned role until their energy is fully spent. Officially unconfirmed, yet many scholars of Vedic tradition believe the original texts of the Mahabharata were created as warnings to future rulers. They serve as reminders of the inevitability of karmic consequences for any decisions made to satisfy personal ambition. Within this inevitability lies the epic's central tragedy. When the veil of illusion lifts, heroic deeds are reduced to the fulfillment of divine duty. As the Bhagavad Gita states at the moment of revelation, "I am time, the destroyer of worlds, come here to annihilate these people." This phrase encapsulates the logic of the events on the Kurukshetra battlefield. The heroes have fulfilled their destiny. The old era has given way to a new historical cycle, and subsequent generations inherit only the memory of past glories, carefully recorded by sages on palm leaves. What remains is a poignant awareness of how fragile human aspirations are before eternity. We close the pages of this story, leaving the ancient kings, priests and warriors in their time, where they continue to bear their burdens. This concludes the exploration of the hidden meanings within the Indian epic, as portrayed in modern literature. You've been watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.